We are very fortunate to have three very accomplished scholars with us this morning. Dr. Orly Buchbinder is an associate professor in mathematics education in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics at the University of New Hampshire. Oops, sorry.
We're playing with equipment.
So her research, her research is in mathematical reasoning and proof, teacher development, as well as technological tools for teaching mathematics. She's received several prestigious research grants from the U.S. National Science Foundation and recently co-edited a special issue of ZDM, Mathematics Education, Exploring and Strengthening University Mathematics Courses for Secondary Teacher Preparation. You can see the full bios of all of our speakers on the website. I'm just giving a little bit of a snapshot here. Dr. Irene Biza, who's joining us online from the UK, is Associate Professor of Mathematics Education at the School of Education and Lifelong Learning at the University of East Anglia in Norwich, UK. Her research focuses on mathematical learning at the post-compulsory level, the use of digital resources, as well as mathematics teachers' discourses. Dr. Biza is Associate Editor of the Journal of Mathematical Behavior and a member of the editorial boards of several research journals such as Educational Studies in Mathematics, the International Journal of Research in Undergraduate Mathematics Education. Last but not least, Dr. Sepideh Stewart is Professor of Mathematics in the Department of Mathematics at University of Oklahoma. Her research is in algebra education, and recently her current interest is around bridging, abstract, and numerical linear algebra with coding and applications. So you see some sort of similar themes even in the research agendas of our speakers today. Professor Stewart has edited several published volumes related to algebra education, including 2 Springer books and a special issue for ZDM, as well as for Primus, which is Problems, Resources, and Issues in Mathematics Undergraduate Studies. She collaborates a lot with mathematicians and recently edited a Springer book, Mathematicians' Reflections on Teaching, a Symbiosis with Mathematics Education Theories. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. I will turn it over first and invite Dr. Buchbinder. And there's this one. Oh, there's a paper. Okay, so what do? I put it here. Like that. Hold that. Hold this. Okay. Like that. Okay, good. So the structure for the panel, I think I didn't mention, each speaker will have 20 minutes to share with us their ideas around these open questions and key issues in research and undergraduate mathematics education. Then we'll have a round of questions from the organizing team and open questions from the floor. Thank you very much. Does this work? No. No. And the power is on. And is there anything that I should do in order? Closer? Closer, like that? Oh, good. So where should this go? Like this? Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so much. We had a very, very big and challenging topic to present on. So my approach was to narrow it down to the things that I actually know about and can talk about. So I'm not sure how much I will going to address these key issues, open questions in mathematics education, though I'm going to try. So I wanted to start with this quote by Felix Klein, and you can see that this is from 1932, who talked about double discontinuity, and he talks about teacher education. He talks about a young university student who comes into the to the university and finds themselves himself. He only talks in him, so I apologize for. Just imagine that I'm using inclusive language.
So he talks about the university student who comes from school. He encounters mathematics that he never seen before, and then he maybe has a good time. Then after finishing the course of study, goes back to teach in school. He needs to teach elementary mathematics, and then because he didn't have a chance to see connections between those types of mathematics, he falls back to those time-honored ways of teaching that his university studies become more or less pleasant memory. So he defined this concept of double discontinuity, which is going from the school to the university and from the university to school. And while Felix Klein talked about specifically somebody who is doing mathematics education, who is preparing to be a future mathematics teacher, I think we can all think about those institutions in the sense that encounter more than mathematics education. And that's what she's supposed to do here. I can ignore those. Okay, it is what it is. It's not this; those issues are not specific to just future teachers. And from the cultural perspectives, we can think about those institutions of school, universities, and then school as a workplace or STEM jobs as figured worlds. Each one of those worlds is characterized by its distinctive discourses, social norms, valued actions, and ways of saying, doing, and being. And students transitioning from high school to university are newcomers into this new culture. They need to learn the language. They need to learn how to speak and be in those institutions. And essentially what it means that they need to shell their former identity of high school students and adopt a new identity as a math major or math education major, or even a future mathematician. This is a very complex process that is often accompanied by something as called culture shock. So culture shock was a concept developed, first coined by a Canadian anthropologist in 1954. And I'm going to discuss and define what a culture shock is, but every time I say culture, you think university, okay? So the first stage of the culture shock is called honeymoon. It's initial excitement about new environment, high motivation to succeed. And then this is followed by this dip that we can see in this curve, which is the cultural crisis, feeling of disorientation and uncertainty about and doubt and stress and all negative feelings about how to be in this particular environment. And you can, again, think about this as university students going through. And then this cultural shock, this cultural dip, is followed by a slow recovery and adaptation where individuals begin to develop positive coping strategies, and curiosity about and positive thinking reappear, and there's desire to integrate in the university culture. And then towards the end, there's an acceptance and independence stage where individuals develop new identity and they become fluent in the adopted the language, values, and ways of being in the culture. So thinking about that, those different transitions from school to university and then to the workplace, they have been at the forefront of the research in undergraduate mathematics education. And I put here a few recent special issues from 2022 in the research in undergraduate mathematics education that talked about calculus as this cornerstone and this place for intersections of institution, disciplines, and communities. And then there was, in 2023, there was special issues about transition from school to university mathematics, and the very recent ZDM special issues, new trends, and didactic research in university mathematics education. So this topic has been researched and people paying a lot of attention into all those different types of transitions. And in addition, I put here a couple of conferences that are specific to university mathematics education, like Room, which is more in the United States conference, but people attend from around the world. In Room, this is International Conference in Mathematics Education, and also, which is also two that are specific to undergraduate mathematics education, and a couple of others like CERME, PME and ICME, they all have a specific subgroups that talk about mathematics education at the university level. So going back to this transitioning figure, I summarized a couple of topics that came out of those three recent special issues that discuss the different foci that researchers attended and think that there still needs a lot of work to be done in this area. And first one is related to the school to university transitions. And they talk about the mathematical gap between secondary school and university schools, and also other factors that affect academic success and failure. The role of technology in facilitating this transition has been highlighted as an area of need of future research. Innovations in teaching practices and the use of technology like AI. So there have been many innovations like active learning in the university courses, but there is still a lot of research needed that will examine the technology, and in particular AI, getting into this from many different perspectives. Students' motivation, values, and engagement in learning, transitions within the university between courses that are mathematical courses and other STEM courses, and also proof and proving in university mathematics with the rise of AI tools for proving has been identified as one of the areas of need of future research. And then transition from the university to the mathematics teacher workplace, specifically with respect to proof and proving at this intersection. This is a quote, I should have put it in the quotation marks. Proof and proving are critical aspects of client's second discontinuity that require further study. So what I'm going to give you is a few examples of the research, specific research projects that I have been involved in and that can be aligned with different areas along this continuum. And the first one is at the very beginning of the university mathematics experiences, going from school to the university mathematics. And the name of this project was Re-envisioning STEM Gateway Courses and Early Calculus Experiences. And it is a collaboration between mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology education faculty. We started as a group of 5 people coming together to drink coffee, and 2 years down the road, not at the first round, but we were eventually funded and for this $2 million grant from NSF, but thinking how are we going to improve introductory STEM courses. And we wanted to focus within each department on the feasible and attainable goals. For mathematics department, we wanted to focus on calculus, which is taught in our institution at the lecture recitation format. This is set in stone and no changes could be done to that. So what we did is we identified recitations as a sweet spot for doing changes and doing some revisions to the way we teach those recitations. They're happening twice a week, about 20 students. We could do that. So we came up with these 2 things. We started using more conceptually oriented tasks. Only 6 of them throughout the entire semester, 6 activities. We did not invent them. We used them from the existing resources and we modified them for our needs. But we did change the teaching structure. So we introduced learning assistants, which are undergraduates that have completed the course and they return to assist with the teaching of the course. And we also introduced the graduate teaching assistants training. Again, we did not invent that. We took things from the existing resources. And those were our research foci and questions. What is the nature of students' learning of calculus concepts in this environment? How do GTAs, LAs support student learning? In what ways? What is the nature of interactions and between students, GTAs, and LAs specifically around calculus concept? And what is the nature of GTAs and LAs pedagogical development? I'm going to focus on this question that is highlighted in blue. So we asked, how do students learn calculus and concepts in this environment? So we have maybe 3 or 4 years of data. We barely scratched the surface. So we focus on the implicit differentiation activity. I know the font is small and don't expect you to read, but I just wanted to get the nature, just get the feeling of the type of a question. What we usually see when in textbooks about implicit differentiation is all about technique, right? So here we had a question about technique, but we wanted to connect this to the graphical representation of implicit curves, which students very rarely see. And we also want them to understand how those calculations that they're doing relate to the graphic representations. We analyzed written work, again, going for the low-hanging fruit. Written work from the class, and here is the big finding. Students struggle to interpret graphical representations of implicit differentiation and to coordinate between symbolic and graphic modalities. So here's a question where we ask them to find an equation of the tangent line at a particular point to this implicit curve, and then find another point on the graph where the tangent line is parallel to the existing one, and draw both of them on the graph. So as you can see, again, without reading, the algebra is fine. They did the symbolic manipulations. When it came to drawing those tangent lines on the graph, first one of them is there, but it's not a tangent line, and the second one is not there at all. So there's a lot of things that students couldn't just put together that we hope they would. Here's another absolutely amazing question: is we asked at what points on the graph the tangent line is vertical. So this group of students, they identified the points, they circled them. Then they did the calculation, and the calculation here shows that comes in the forms of y instead of y values instead of x-axis. They could not find those numbers on the graph, and they came to the amazing conclusion that no points have a vertical tangent line. So it was really, really eye-opening. Another one was continuity at a point, and we gave them of a function at a point. We gave them all different, so the definition of the continuity at a point, and then a whole bunch of different variations of this, right? So one of them is a contrapositive, another is like partial contrapositive, and we asked them to decide whether the statements are true or false, and we wanted to look at how students reason about those questions and what types of justifications they use. Again, we analyzed written data. Low-hanging fruit, we just looked at what they have written during class time. And the main findings were, again, very interesting. While many students successfully applied continuity rules in the straightforward cases, as statements increased in logical complexity, the challenges appeared, and students relied heavily on examples of discontinuous functions. But even when correct examples were used, students struggled to draw logically valid conclusions or inferences on those from those examples. So here, the answer is correct. There's some meaningful examples or some meaningful reasoning is put together, but the overall logical conclusion is incorrect, and I'm not going into details for the sake of time, but students struggle to negate a disjunction. So, like I said, we barely scratched the surface, and we got more questions than answers. The blue one is the one that we started with, but then we came up with a whole bunch of other questions. Why students' understanding of calculus concepts is so shallow? Why is it happening? And how, if at all, do the observed challenges in different content areas relate to each other? Maybe there's broader cognitive or epistemological obstacles behind students' challenges. I'm not following the time, so please do that. How can students' learning and understanding of those concepts can be supported through instructional tasks or certain pedagogies, or maybe with digital technologies, because we only did things with paper and pencil? And also, how can instructors be supported? So in our institutions, the GTAs, they're future mathematicians. And also LA, so we throw them, we did provide them professional support, but we still don't know 100% how to make their work in such a way that they would be able to support students better. And then this was a big question: what can students do differently? We felt that as a faculty, as a department, we invested a lot in making students' experiences better. We were thinking, can students meet us halfway there? How can students become better learners? And this is, we're thinking and we're tinkering with those ideas. This is, we have a name. We not have funding yet, but we have a name. Is how can students become better? How can we help students to become better learners? And we're thinking maybe to use AI modules in order to help students develop specific learning skills and metacognitive practices related that could be help them to become better, specifically in mathematics. There's a ton of literature on how to write 10-page paper and how to structure your time. There's not enough on if you need to prepare for mathematics exams, what should you do in order to be successful, and so on. So we're trying to, this is where our thinking is right now. And also, if we are successful in helping students developing those skills, would this improve their learning of calculus? So a lot of open questions that we are working on now. So my next example is from the ZDM special issue that that Amy mentioned. 5 minutes, okay. About making university mathematics matter for secondary teacher preparation. And this is, I'm not going to talk about this a lot, but we talked about the idea that future teachers learn mathematics at the mathematics departments, and then they learn pedagogy at the education departments. And this is silos and fragmented, and we do not have enough interactions between those pieces. So we asked the question, what can mathematicians or mathematics educators who teach at the mathematics department, what can they do in their courses to make this better for the future teachers? Too much information. I did not plan to go through this, but I can tell you that we identified many different ways in which this could be done, and I invite you to read this special issue. But from the project that I led and that was done at our department focused on the reasoning and proving at the bridging between disciplinary practices of reasoning and proving and supporting secondary teachers. And this idea of focusing of reasoning and proving at the university level was kind of motivated. First of all, this is what I'm passionate about, but it's also something that we have a very big disconnect, different type of disconnect between the role of proof that is communicated at the university level and what is actually happening in mathematics classrooms. And we wanted to help bridging this gap for future teachers. So the project was to develop a capstone course. We took an existing capstone course and we modified that in order to make this focus on mathematical reasoning and proof, and this is being specifically for future teachers. So it has those 4 modules that are focused on particular proof topics, and within each module we developed activities that help future teachers refresh and crystallize their own mathematical knowledge of proof, connect this to how students and the high school level think about proof, and to the secondary curriculum, and then apply this by going and teaching a lesson in a school. The lesson would be proof oriented, and we wanted to know how their knowledge develops in this area. So the main findings of this that was again mind-blowing is that we saw that mathematical knowledge specifically was very fragile, proof was very fragile, and this was their last year of their program. They have taken multiple proof courses. But they were still confusing between converse, inverse, and contrapositive. I'm not talking about the words, I'm talking about the actual mathematical content of those. They could not distinguish between different types of proofs. They were uncertain how to disprove existential statements, and so also things that kind of supposed to be bread and butter, and they have interacted with them in multiple courses. Now, after taking the capstone course, we did see improvement in all of those areas. But then more questions than answers came up after this project because, first of all, why this knowledge is so fragile. And then if we were able to show improvement, how stable this improvement is and how long lasting its effect. Maybe we're just saying, okay, we taught them something. And then maybe connecting this to the specific design elements of the course, and also how those design elements can be generalized to other institutional contexts. Maybe it's just an instructor or context specific ways. And then the last question is, did it matter? And did it matter? Is there any residue from this when they go and they in their classrooms, and where is reasoning and proof? I have an interesting answer for that, but I realize that I don't have enough time, so I'm going to skip that, and we may be talking about this later. And there's a lot of apples, green apples that you're seeing, but I'm going to go here. So I wanted to summarize some key aspects that came out connected to the literature that we saw before, but also from my specific research. This culture shock across all types of transitions seems to be inevitable. And we cannot fight that, but we can do something else about this. And maybe we can think about how to support students and future teachers in those transitions. In addition to mathematical gaps that have been explored, there are also discursive, motivational, and metacognitive barriers along of those transitions that have not been sufficiently explored, but they have huge effect on how students learn mathematics. Innovative teaching practices, including meaningful integration and technology and AI, is something that I think is really important to this work. Preparation and professional development of instructors, and again, proof and proving across school, university, and back to school continuum still seems to be an open question. So thank you so much. Here's some papers, and then I'll pause here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Buchbinder. May I now invite Dr. Irene Biza to share her views. And I think you should be able to screen share.
Yes. Hello. I think it will be better to share from my side, right?
Yes.
Yes, please.
So we'll have control. Can you see my screen?
Loading.
Yes, we can see.
Excellent. Oh, thank you so much. It is such a privilege to be with you, even virtually. And thank you to the organizers. Thank you to Amy for inviting me and making this possible. A few lines about my background. I grew up in the mathematics department. I did my undergraduate course, my master's course in mathematics education, my PhD in the mathematics department. I used to be a school teacher, and now I am working at the university. So in my research in mathematics education, I cannot avoid bringing the school teacher perspective or the lecturer perspective or the mathematician perspective and try to balance or bridge all these different identities. I'm glad listening in Orly's presentation that Orly already shared some examples of the journals and the conferences in which we see findings from research in undergraduate mathematics education. Especially in CERMI conference, there are specialized groups, as already mentioned. One of them is the topic working group 14, which is in university mathematics education, and a lot of recent research in this area are shared in this group. Of course, there are other groups on proof and reasoning, use of digital resources, etc. So, similarly to the first presentation, I will draw on what I know in this research in university mathematics, and I will, sorry, I need to find a way to change my slide. I'm getting there. Okay. It is an open question. Try to identify issues and open questions in university mathematics education research. And I try to structure my brief presentation today according to a couple of themes. one theme is on undergraduate students and their learning. Another theme is mathematics teachers, pre and in-service teachers. And a third theme on mathematics education for mathematics undergraduates. And I will close with productive collaborations towards innovations and changes in university mathematics teaching. In each one of those themes, I will present a snapshot from my research in order to trigger some ideas of future research. And starting from undergraduate students, I will start with an example, and it is from calculus and tangent lines. And I was so pleased seeing this in Orly's presentation as well. So the question here is the drawn line, the blue one, the horizontal one? I don't know if this is visible on the screen. If this line is a tangent line of the function graph, the green graph on the screen. And now I will rephrase the same problem, examine whether the line with equation y equals 2 is a tangent line of the graph of function f, where f of x is 3x cubed plus 2, which is exactly the same problem, but this time having the formula of the functions and the line. I used this question, a similar one, in a questionnaire I distributed to 182 first-year undergraduate mathematics students in Greek universities. 46% of them said, yes, this is a tangent line. 54% said no or non-response. Those are year one students, have seen about tangents in their preparation for the entrance examination to the university. What was super interesting was the reasoning behind their choices. Those who said no, they provided some justifications. For example, although the line has only one common point with the curve, the line separates the curve in two semiplanes, or the line is not a tangent because the system line and curve has one solution and not a double solution. My impression is that it is not tangent because the concavity of the curve changes. And yeses were also interesting. The justification for a yes is it has one common point, or the line is tangent because f is differentiable at this point, and the line has one double common point with the graph in a specific region, which is quite small, or the line is tangent and A is an inflection point. So there is a variation in those justifications. Some of them are right, some of them are not exactly right, some of them are okay. The interesting point is where those justifications are coming from. If we step back and see the background, the previous experiences of those students, according to the Greek educational system, they have seen a lot of Euclidean geometry. They have seen the lines in the case of a circle. Then they see again the tangent lines in a circle in conic sections. They see in algebra tangent lines, parabolas. Then they see the tangent, different versions of lines in parabolas. They see in conic sections, hyperbolas, and then they go to the function graphs where the tangent line is introduced as the limiting position of the second lines, and we see again the definition of the line to a circle as a limiting position. So for us, from the mathematical perspective, all those definitions of the tangent line are in some way connected. Also, we see the formal definition of the tangent line through the derivative. But for students, this is not obvious. For students, this change from one context to another context, sometimes they stay disconnected. the routines they apply in each one of those cases, the narratives they use to justify what a tangent line is, are different. So understanding what students say and do in calculus is more in terms of how students communicate mathematical ideas. And that brings us to some questions that we would like to investigate further. By seeing the students' mathematical activity in the light of their previous experiences, practices, routines, in the context this activity takes place. For example, it's not the same for mathematics versus non-mathematics specialized courses. The task situation, if it's going to be graphical or an algebraic expression, but also in terms of the available resources, what students can use to perform those mathematical activities. And also in certain mathematical areas, even though we see connections between geometry, Euclidean geometry, or Cartesian geometry, or algebra, or analysis, this is not obvious for the students. Understanding these connections, how the context influence students' performance, will help us to design appropriate pedagogical approaches that address students' needs. It is still a question, though, how we can design appropriate pedagogical approaches to address those needs. That drives me to the next theme, which is about mathematics teachers, pre and in-service teachers. And I will pause a little bit here to say a few things about the Math Task program, a program I am involved in the Research in Mathematics Education group at the University of East Anglia. In the Math Task program, we set out from research evidence, but that says that theory around mathematics teaching is better discussed on the base of specific situation and not in abstract. So with this idea in mind, we design situation-specific tasks, which we call math tasks, and we engage teachers with those tasks individually or in groups, in writing, in discussion, and in productively reflective setting of school or university-based workshops. Those math tasks always start with a mathematical problem. And then something is happening, what we call a critical incident in the classroom that occurs as students and teachers are working towards solving this problem. I will show you an example in order to move on some of the findings and some ideas for future research as well. This is the tangent line math task, and it has been inspired by findings similar to the ones I presented earlier. Two students try to solve a problem that a line is a tangent to a function graph. One student student A solves a system of linear equations and concludes that they have one point in common, and through this observation concludes that this is a tangent indeed. Student B draws the graph, and they observe that there is one point in common, but the line cuts across the graph and concludes that this is not a tangent. You can recognize in those responses some of the things I mentioned earlier. What makes this a math task is a set of questions at the end that invites participating teachers to reflect on this situation and provide some of their responses they would give to those students if they were at the position of the teacher. Just a snapshot of from research in which we have used these specific math tasks. In a group of participants that were all mathematics graduates, some of them pre and some of them in-service mathematics teachers with a teaching experience ranging for a few to many years. All of them were candidates for a master's in mathematics education. We invited written responses to these math tasks from then we selected 11 of them for an interview, and the interview was based on their responses on the math task. Surprisingly, 43 of the 90 participants supported student B's claim that the line in the task is not a tangent line. Some of them said it explicitly, it is not, 25 of them, and some of them implicitly. We extracted this from the context of their response. And there was no consensus whether an argument based on the graph would be mathematically acceptable or not. There were more observations on their responses, but I will stay in this second bullet item to go a bit further and give you an example from the interview. When we asked one of the participants if an argument based on the graph, if such argument would be acceptable or not, the participants said no. First of all, it is not an adequate answer in exams. Then if we said, okay, let's set aside the exam thing and say and discuss if it is adequate mathematically. The same participant said, mathematically, in the classroom, I would welcome it at a lesson level and I would analyze it and praise it, but not in a test. And when we asked to elaborate, he said, through the graph-based argument, I would try to lead the discussion towards a normal proof with the definition, the slope, the derivative, etc. And he added, this is what we, as mathematicians, have learned so far, to ask for precision, to have this axiomatic principle in mind, and this is what is required in the exams, and we're supposed to prepare the students for the exams. If we stay a little bit and read those responses from the same person around the same topic, the acceptance or not of a graphical argument, we see different identities come forward. We see the identity of the teacher as a mathematician who represents the community of the who engages with mathematical practices and seeks axiomatic and logic in mathematical activity. But we see also the educator who needs to support students' learning. We see also the professional who has as a task, as a mission, to prepare the students for the exams. That triggered our thinking around teacher preparation. It's not just what teachers know or they don't know, but it is what teachers prioritize and what they notice in the classroom activity. And sometimes they may prioritize something that it's not mathematically 100% accurate, but because they think that this is more appropriate for their students. So these are some areas that seek further attention in terms of research. What do teachers notice and prioritize? How would teachers develop their noticing skills? How would teachers develop their mathematical and pedagogical discourses together? And how teachers, would teachers be prepared to address pedagogical and mathematical challenges? And I'm moving now, I hope I have some time, to the mathematics education for mathematics undergraduates. And this is something that we do in our school. My colleague Elena Nardi and myself offering courses in mathematics education. My course is for mathematics students, year 3 mathematics students, some physics students join as well, and Elena's module is for education students, and sometimes we compare the behavior of our students. In my module, the aim is to introduce mathematics students to the field of mathematics education research and to prepare them for mathematics teaching, but not all of them will become teachers. The rationale of this module is the benefits through reflection on students' own and other learning practices, introduction of a humor perspective of mathematics, preparation for mathematics teaching, and development of communication and presentation skills. We use math tasks in our lesson, and this is another example of a math task. Again, there is a problem that starts the incident, and solving the equation 1 over x is larger than 1 over 2. And the students respond that the solution to those inequalities x less than 2. And there is some debate and an argument between the students. I will go through this quickly and say that something that we are very interested in those in undergraduate responses to those tasks is what we call the reification of mathematical and pedagogical discourse. In simple terms, is how students use the mathematical language and practices together with the pedagogical language and practices. And if I very briefly present some of the findings from 8 students, 3 out of them agreed with Mary, who said that x is less than 0, although this wasn't right. And the remaining 5 students spotted the flaw in Mary's response. Some of them described it graphically, some of them algebraically, some of them both. But good pedagogical intentions in their responses were compromised by mathematical errors. So that triggers the thought that pedagogy and mathematics should come together. They engaged with research mathematics education routines by referencing relevant literature, sometimes explicitly, sometimes implicitly, and they endorsed maths education narratives of the importance of considering social interaction during mathematical activity. They use the theory of mathematics education to describe student responses, and we noticed, however, a ritualized engagement with mathematics education theory and findings. And sometimes they use this theory as a descriptor of a pedagogical prescription and not as a way to interpret a situation. So some questions that I would like to investigate further is what is the role of mathematics education discourse in shifting the attention from error spotting to identify the reason behind this error in mathematics undergraduates, and what tasks can assist students to address both pedagogical and mathematical issues. And I'm moving quickly to my 4th and last theme, productive collaboration towards innovation and changes in university mathematics. And I will start with a brief story. Those are real people. A lecturer, Whitty, George Whitty, who is a colleague from the School of Mathematics in our university, was invited to offer a first-year introductory course for mathematics students. He inherited this course from the colleagues who previously had it, and he wanted to support the students in their transition from secondary to tertiary mathematical studies, and he wanted to enhance students' mathematical communication and engagement. Owen Hooper is a researcher. He's one of our PhD students, and he wanted to design a study on the implementation of interactive mathematical sessions for university mathematics students that goes beyond chalk and talk, and sessions that encourage active learning. Those 2 people came together, and they create a community of practice. The needs of the lecturer met the aspirations of the researcher. And I think this is a good recipe of productive collaborations, identifying what lecturers' needs are and finding ways of lecturers becoming co-designers and co-researchers. And this creates productive communities of practice that benefit both researchers and teachers. I have phrased this as a question because it is still finding out how this might be possible. And the question is, how can the theoretical tools of research in university mathematics education can assist the productive collaboration towards innovative design, implementation, and evaluation? And what are the key issues that seek change in university mathematics teaching? There are plenty of them. There are the availability of digital resources. Orly mentioned some examples, and the impact on mathematical learning and teaching, especially the impact of artificial intelligence on mathematical practicing, teaching, learning, assessment, and curriculum development. Mathematics for non-mathematics specialists. I think there are plenty of issues and themes, and also mathematics for mathematics teachers. I would stop here. Thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much,
Thanks
Dr.
so
Biza.
much, Amy, and organizers of this workshop for inviting me. And thanks for all of you to be here. I really appreciate it. I hope to be able to interact with you over this next couple of days, and so you can ask questions, and that'd be great. And thanks for the friends on Zoom as well. It'd be nice to maybe have the opportunity to chat. I'm Sepideh Stewart from University of Oklahoma. And just like Dr. Biza just said a few minutes ago, that I was also born in the mathematics department. And I wanted to become a mathematician, research mathematician. And so I was doing my undergraduate studies, and then I needed one more paper to a course to graduate on my undergraduate degree. And then they said, well, you've taken everything that we offer. There's nothing else except this thing. It's called mathematics education. And I said, it's okay, I'll take it. So because I want to finish. So I took that, and I still remember that room that I entered, that whole thing. I remember it very clearly. And that course changed my worldview and my life, basically. So I decided to do my master's and then go do my PhD in mathematics education. So that's a little bit of history. This was Tommy Dreyfus is one of mathematics educators, and this is a chapter that was written a long time ago, I guess now, in a book. It's called Advanced Mathematical Thinking, and he wrote one place to look for ideas on how to find ways to improve a student's understanding is the mind of the working mathematician. Not much has been written on how mathematicians actually work. So, and many of my colleagues here doing mathematics education will say, no, that's not quite right, because there are a lot written now about mathematicians, and I agree. But at the time when I was a graduate student and I read that, it was really striking for me. It was very, very interesting. And he's a very deep thinker, of course, in our field. So this is a book by Byers that I read this book, How Mathematicians Think, and it was interesting. You can read it. It's one of the things it says that many mathematicians usually don't talk about mathematics because talking is not their thing. Their thing is doing of mathematics. So maybe we'll see. Going back to my PhD thesis, which was in linear algebra, maybe this is familiar to you. We asked a bunch of math majors, asked them, describe what do you think about these topics? Write it in your own words, basically, tell us something about these concepts in linear algebra. And this, I call this student my honest student. This student was pretty honest and said, sorry, don't know how to explain, just know how to calculate. And that's true. And when I did my PhD in University of Auckland in New Zealand, and so they were very, very good students. And then it's true, they were able to calculate. But if you ask them something specific, they would just give you the definition, say, tell me something about linear combination. Just say C1 V1 plus C2 V2. They say, okay, what does it mean? And they couldn't really tell me. So I'm going to show you this theory, and this is the only theory that I'm going to talk about because a lot of what I'm going to go after this is going to be based on this. So the theory is theory of 3 worlds of mathematics. By David Hall, who is my academic grandfather. My advisor came from England, Mike Thomas, and David was his advisor. So he came up with this idea that your life, your journey as a mathematician, it starts from a toddler. Imagine as a toddler, you're playing with these shapes, and then you go to high school and you school, and then you basically symbolizes those your embodiment, what he calls it, and then become a mathematician like Hilbert here. So he called these three worlds of mathematical thinking: embodied, symbolic, and formal, from your entire journey as a human being. So these are this is a definition of what these things mean. Like embodied world is our operation as biological creatures with gestures, and so embodiment can also perceive as giving body to an abstract idea. So it could be also conceptual. You don't have to actually draw something. You can think of some idea of spatial things and all of that. He called an embodied world, and then he called a symbolic world based on practicing sequences of actions, and so operationalizing your embodiment. Like we saw something about the derivatives and so on, and how those pictures in calculus is a lot of this is going on. You symbolize your embodiment that you're thinking, your drawings. And then it's of course the formal world, the list of axioms expressed formally through sequence of theorems and definitions, and they have a formal structure. So this, you can maybe read more about this, and this is how he basically tries to show these worlds, again, from world of maybe like arithmetic and numbers and spaces, and so you can see one thing, maybe you can notice that there's a connection. I don't know if I can show that here. Right here is kind of like a blend of these three worlds. These worlds are not separate. They're not, they're basically in the mind. So over the years, I've been interested in using these worlds. So one way of thinking, and I'm also changing a lot about how I think about these worlds, by the way. So I'm not stationary or committed to anything. I'm just trying to understand. So one way of thinking about, earlier on, we were looking at, in the mind of the students, most probably these worlds are very, very far away from each other. Whereas in the mind of the mathematician is like what we saw, it's kind of blended. They're all there in many sense, but maybe in the sense of the student. So a student is really happy to be in the symbolic world, like that student said, that can calculate. But and maybe students are happy to be in embodied, but can they actually travel between these worlds, move between and transition between these worlds? Imagine if it happens a lot that you're in the formal world, happen to be there, and so if a student get there, how do you accommodate for it? How do we actually, what do we do for that student when it gets to the formal world, which is very, very, as we know it is very, intense and so on. So these are some of the interesting questions that we were thinking. So in my thesis, going back again, I try to kind of write, for example, oops, I don't think it worked. I don't think that one worked, but so I tried to see where my students mainly were. Their conceptual and procedural understanding were basically in the symbolic world. I'm also using another construct here by Deminsky's action, process, and object. So students a lot of the questions and interviews and results that I got from my linear algebra students, I found that they were basically comfortable in this world of symbolic, which was, I also divided that into algebra and matrix. So all of these in my mind, from a student perspective, but now I wanted to know, how do teachers think about this? How do university teachers and professors think about these ideas? So that's where I started this whole thing about reflecting on your teaching. So reflection is big in mathematics education. We have many researchers are looking at reflection is an essential part of teaching mathematics. And Dewey, for example, says that reflection is active, persistent, and careful consideration of any belief or form of knowledge in the light of the grounds that support it and further conclusion which it tends, and more researchers have written about reflection. So here, this is a map of New Zealand. My advisor, Mike Thomas, in the North Island, that's where I was. Some of you have been to this country, I bet, I'm sure. So you recognize. And John Hannah was a South Island. John Hannah was a mathematician. He was also in my PhD committee. So he got very, very interested in linear algebra. And he wanted to work with us after my PhD finished. So we welcomed that to talk to John Hannah. So we were in this island, different places, and we asked John Hannah to, after each lecture, go to your room, perhaps somewhere, and write down a reflection of what happened in that class every day. So John Hannah religiously did that every time. So one of the things was interesting. We were interested in emphasizing language and visualization. Of course, he was teaching linear algebra, so he took journals, and he said it takes about an hour to write it down. It's interesting, but I can see you're only getting my view of what happened. I'm trying to be dispassionate and stand back from it and say what happened. Well, I can tell you things that did not quite go well. And so he wrote a lot. He said that the teacher side of me, it goes back to when I was first learning how to teach. I felt like I was just required to be a machine. It gave good notes. And the students were learning stuff. But I think as time has gone by, I try to put more value into it. So he was really reflecting and working with us, Mike and I, over what was happening. And then I went down once or twice to interview his students, interview him. So we wrote some publications based on that. And here's an example he gave to his students. He was creating tasks, which was different from what he was, given perhaps before. He was asking his student, for example, a question like this, that write a paragraph. Here are 3 vectors, write a paragraph. Then it will convey these concepts in it. So I use that in my classes in linear algebra. And a lot of times students just write one definition after another, just define and say, no, please don't define. Just say something about these particular vectors. How do you see these vectors? So this was one of John's innovation. So Jenny continued. I moved away from there to US. And I started this journey of collaboration with mathematicians from where I started with John Hannah. With many, so above this line, these people are all reflecting and writing journals and writing diaries, perhaps you can maybe say, and some way of writing and keeping track of what was happening. Because if you ask me, what did you do last week? I can't tell you now. I've forgotten already about it. But writing it, then you will remember what you actually did and what happened. So they publicized it in a secret website. So we read those reflections, and then every week, the following week, we met and talked about what did you do and things like that, and asked them questions and so on. The 3 below, they were not reflecting, they just basically talking. So you can see a variety of concepts, and people talked about people teaching all sorts. Ralph Schmidt was teaching abstract algebra. Noel Brady was teaching algebraic topology. None of these are my area of research. None of these are I don't even teach these. But I am interested in how they are living in these 3 worlds of mathematics and how do they move between these worlds. So here's Ralph and another colleague, Amia, and myself, and John Paul was, some of you know John Paul. John Paul is a mathematics education person, and those 2 were mathematicians. So this is the room we met every week, and we went over Ralph's notes, the journals. So when I first went there, I said, I'd really like to work, I've done some kind of work like that before, and I'd like to continue this work. And I said, okay, sounds good. What do we do? I said, I don't know. This is our project. We need to decide and maybe think about what we are going to do. I'm not here to tell you what to do. We're going to decide. So one of the things that we went over was accommodation in the formal world of mathematical thinking. So Ralph was teaching abstract algebra, graduate level, 2 semesters. So religiously, he wrote 2 semesters of reflection every single day. And if you read those, you'll think you were in that class. That's how much he wrote. If I went to class, which I did go to class, and observed him, you will see nothing. You see just a class, you know, someone at the back was like this, and Ralph was writing, and you don't see a thing. But when you read his reflection, you see this different world that he's bringing to you. So we had this research question of what world of mathematical thinking this mathematician is accessing the most when he's teaching algebra, abstract algebra. So what sort of challenges, pedagogical challenges he's facing? So this was a true collaboration, because I was not telling them what to do or how to say anything. It was all up to us as a group to decide. And so he decided that we should write about 4 days prior to introducing Galois theory. That was one of the things that he talked about. And he said, this would be nice to talk about, to write something. So I'm not going to go through all of it because it's too long. So in those classes, there was also a student, graduate students was also writing reflection daily, every day. Not every day, actually. Sometimes the graduate student wasn't there. The teacher was always writing, but graduate student not always there. So then on those days, we wouldn't have anything. But we compared the 4 days of Ralph and 4 days of this graduate students writing and tried to see what they were writing. So here he is writing, and I'm not going to read it all, talking about this theory he's going to produce, and he's going to give them, and the student is totally somewhere else, writing about other things, basically, around the area, you know, sort of, yes, today Dr. Schmidt did a quick review over the material, you know, so takes only about 5 minutes, so our results basically show student did not comment on this explicitly. This is still day 1, but still I got a feeling the remark made sense to most of them. Here's the student Kim. When the teacher says that, I make sure to highlight, star, mark it with bold letters. The student is writing these other things, anything, everything but math. So it said, Ralph said, I asked a lot of questions and got a reasonable amount of replies, made me think that the majority of the class is still with me. Little he knew that none of, maybe at least this student was not with him. So that's how we as teachers perhaps think. So then this is now, I'm fast forwarded to day 4. So all these days, the student did not write anything about the mathematics he's trying to bring until day 4. So day 4, he's bringing everything, and then he said the main theorem of, then the students start writing something about the main theorem of Galois theory. That is how Dr. Schmidt started the class. And then she said, it was so Andrew Wiles that I wanted to clap. So she got all excited at the last day. And then Ralph is also excited after weeks of developing theory it was like bringing the harvest. So it was a very eye-opener. It was a very eye-opener for him as well. So he said the air in the formal world is much thinner, but also much clearer. So I don't exactly know what he means by this, but it's interesting. So it's not always apparent in which order, maybe embodied symbolic form, or the concept may be introduced, but Toll saying that when all 3 possibilities are available at university level, the framework says nothing about the sequence in which teaching should occur. So apparently Ralph took the route of embodied and then go to formal and then embodied, back to embodied. So here's a couple of things in here. Ralph wrote, mathematics drives the class. I don't even think about the pedagogy in some sense. Another thing that also came up, when at the end of the semester, we showed Kim's journals to Ralph and said, hey, this is what your student wrote. And he read everything carefully. And he said, it's just like me and the student went to different classes. This is not my class. So he was really frustrated to read these things that the student wrote, which was a disparity between what the student was thinking and what he was trying to convey. So these are some of the main themes that came out of that study of 2 years, basically. It took 2 years. Pedagogical challenges of communicating the greatness of a concept like Galois theory to a beginner, difficulties of teaching a very abstract concept, which are hard to explain or break down. Having a dynamical class while still being traditional, mediating the disconnect between desire of mathematical elegance and the struggles of a student learning difficult materials. So, so Ralph gave us a lot, and he tried to remember a lot of things of what was happening in the classroom. So one time I said, okay, Ralph, he said it was very difficult to teach tensor. And I said, Ralph, what would you do next time? He would say, I don't know. I don't know. So he was very, very honest about things. And as an educator, we're not trying to tell him how to teach his class or how to do things. So we were just basically there as a way of support. This was another study. So I'm just going to go over until my time is finished in a couple of minutes, 2 minutes to 3 minutes. So again, this was a algebraic topology. So Noel is he's a geometer. So Noel could not write, he could not speak until he draws something. So he was always drawing. He was always coming and drawing, and even teaching the entire what he did last week on the board to us. And so one of the things I always ask them, Noel, why do you draw this shape here and this donut in here, and then what makes you to move to go there into writing these symbolically? What happens in there? Do you just run out and then you're going to go there? And what about the theorems, and what about the formulas and proofs? I mean, he said, oh yeah, Hatcher has it there. You don't need those. You just need to give student intuition. That's what you need to give them in this class. And that's what he did. He was basically drawing and just, and one of the things he said, don't read my journals. You should read my notes, the notes that I give to my students. Because in those notes, in the margins, he would put pictures. He would put in his intuition. So say, no, why do you actually give your intuition to the kids freely like this? Because he'll say that, oh, it takes years to build intuition. So he say, why do you give it to your students? So these questions will come up. So he also had another student that was working with him. So here's a comment from a student who might be interested. He said, I'm a little worried, however, when we get brand new material, Dr. Brady's way of proving results might remain in the same verbal, hand-waving, picture drawing style, and that won't be enough for me to follow the proof. And so the students say, I'm glad that we have the notes, at least I can go and study those. And so there's so many of these stories that I can share. Then this is his way of basically going over how he saw the embodied symbolic formula of a homology theory. So this was another story that I'm not going to go over these. Another person was in physics. We looked at physics, and there's other collaborations I've done with mathematicians over these years. We just wrote this paper about linear algebra curriculum study group, that a group of mathematicians and mathematics education people. We published recommendations for teaching linear algebra. So I just want to get to one more thing in here, that the word collaboration that we use, actually in the literature, or maybe in everyday conversation, we talk. There are 3 words apparent: cooperation, coordination, and collaboration. And collaboration is risky. So we use these interchangeably, but they are very, very different. So if you go to social sciences, they have a lot of literature about what is the collaboration. So they basically have written books about these things that, so collaboration is durable, per se, pervasive, and in relationship. Collaborations bring previously separated organization into a new structure, and so on. So they are very different ideas. This is a book that came out in 2018. So on the topic of reflection, the authors noted that most papers deal with pre or in-service teachers in grades from 1 to 12, preschool, university student teachers being almost absent on the idea of reflection. This is 20 years of communication and cooperation of collaboration in Europe, the studies. So we as mathematicians, as Thurston said, need to put far greater effort into communicating mathematical ideas. To accomplish this, we need to pay much more attention to communicating not just our definitions, theorem, and proofs, but also our ways of thinking. We need to appreciate the value of different ways of thinking about the same mathematical structure. Some takeaway is that collaboration should come naturally. Our studies were not based on a problem or a crisis. Reading and discussing mathematics education theory together was very, very helpful. And I always had an undergraduate person on our teams. So here's think about a vision of a fruitful, sustainable collaboration model that I tried to capture some of this in this book that you're most welcome to look at. And the journey continues. Thank you so much.